It was supposed to be the happiest trip of their lives. 3 bright little girls flying with their mother for the first time, giggling about clouds and window seats. But within minutes, their laughter turned into cries as a flight attendant's arrogance crossed into cruelty. No one expected what happened next, a scene so disturbing passengers froze in disbelief. A mother's worst nightmare unfolded 30,000 feet above the ground. What could drive a grown woman to humiliate innocent children? Watch till the end. You won't believe the truth behind it. Wait a second. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Alyssa Carter, a 34-year-old pediatric nurse from Atlanta, had saved for months to take her triplet daughters, Ava, Amara, and Aria, on their first vacation to Disneyland. It was a dream she'd promised them since their father passed away. As they walked through the airport in matching pink sweaters and bright smiles, Alyssa felt a mix of pride and peace. Everything seemed perfect. The girls held her hands, humming their favorite cartoon tune as they boarded the plane. Seat 14A, B, and C. Together at last. The plane was nearly complete. But Alyssa noticed the flight attendant, a tall, blonde woman with a sharp expression named Vanessa, watching her with something colder than indifference, disdain. Alyssa brushed it off. She'd faced silent judgment before. But she couldn't have known that this would be the flight that tested every ounce of her strength and her faith in humanity. From the start, the tension felt wrong. Vanessa's voice carried an edge whenever she spoke near Alyssa's row. "Make sure they don't touch anything," she said while glancing at the triplets, as if their small hands were weapons. When Alyssa politely asked for an extra blanket, her daughters often got cold, Vanessa sighed so loudly that passengers turned to look. Minutes later, turbulence hit, mild at first. The triplets giggled nervously, holding on to their mother. Alyssa tried to comfort them, but Vanessa approached again, her tone cutting. "You people need to control your kids," she snapped. Alyssa froze. The words weren't just rude. They carried something darker, something she'd heard before in different forms, in other rooms. Then came the real shock. When little Amara accidentally spilled a bit of orange juice while trying to steady her cup, Vanessa yanked the tray so hard that it startled the child. "Unbelievable," she muttered, before leaning closer. And then it happened. In a blur of fury, Vanessa grabbed the girl's arm, dragging her slightly forward. Gasps filled the cabin. The woman's eyes burned with hate. And then, in an act so vile it defied belief, she spat. Right at the little girl's face, the plane went silent. Alyssa's heart stopped. Her daughters screamed. A passenger yelled. And for the first time in her life, Alyssa felt something inside her snap. Alyssa lunged up from her seat, tears blurring her vision as rage and disbelief collided inside her. The image of her daughter, trembling, her tiny cheek wet with saliva, would haunt her forever. She shouted for help, demanding the pilot be told, but Vanessa only crossed her arms, smirking. "Sit down before you're removed," she sneered. That's when other passengers rose. Phones came out. A businessman from row 10 yelled, "We saw everything." A woman began recording. The captain's voice crackled overhead, asking what was happening. Vanessa paled as the truth cornered her. The air shifted, from silent horror to collective fury. Alyssa stood tall beside her daughters, shaking but unbroken. For the first time, Vanessa realized she wasn't in control anymore. Justice, it seemed, was about to take flight. When the plane landed, police were waiting. Witnesses stepped forward, videos played back, and the truth was undeniable. Vanessa was led off the aircraft in handcuffs, her uniform now a symbol of shame. The airline issued an immediate apology and suspended her indefinitely. Alyssa and her daughters were escorted to a quiet lounge, where strangers, passengers who'd once been silent, came to comfort them. The triplets still cried softly, but Alyssa held them close, whispering that they were brave, that they were safe. Days later, the video went viral, igniting outrage and sparking worldwide conversation. People demanded change, empathy, and accountability. Alyssa never sought fame, only fairness. And as she tucked her daughters into bed that night, she wondered, How many more must endure pain before humanity learns to be kind? In the weeks that followed, Alyssa's world shifted from quiet grief to public attention. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Reporters, activists, lawyers. Some wanted interviews. Others offered legal aid. But Alyssa wasn't chasing headlines. She was still trying to process the image of her daughter's faces that day. Confusion, fear, disbelief. Ava, the oldest by 2 minutes, had stopped speaking for a week. Amara woke from nightmares crying about the mean lady on the plane. Arya clung to Alyssa everywhere they went. The trauma ran deep, invisible but sharp, cutting through their innocence. Meanwhile, the video, shaky but clear, painted everything. Vanessa's voice, her tone, her movements. The world watched, horrified. Social media exploded with outrage. Airlines faced pressure to train staff on bias and discrimination. One headline read, "Mother of triplets harassed mid-flight, airline faces reckoning." But Alyssa wanted more than an apology. She wanted change. She met with attorneys not for revenge, but for reform. She wanted policies that protected families of color from humiliation in public spaces. She wanted her daughters to grow up in a world where kindness was the norm, not the exception. The airline offered compensation, but Alyssa refused until they committed to training every employee in racial sensitivity and de-escalation. When they finally agreed, she signed, not for herself, but for every mother who feared what her child might face. Months passed, and slowly her daughters began healing. One afternoon, Ava painted a picture of a plane, this time filled with smiling people. She wrote under it, "Good people fly, too." Alyssa cried when she saw it. That's when she knew. Despite the cruelty, her children's light hadn't been dimmed. But something else happened that she hadn't expected. The businessman from row 10, Daniel Price, reached out. He'd been deeply shaken by what he saw and had shared the video online. He told Alyssa he couldn't forget how strong she'd been, standing up not just for her daughters but for everyone watching. Together, they started a small initiative called Fly Fair, a campaign to promote equal treatment in air travel. They hosted talks, shared resources, and encouraged bystanders to speak up when witnessing injustice. Within a year, several major airlines adopted similar programs. Alyssa often reflected on that day, the horror, the humiliation, but also the awakening it caused. The silence of others had broken. People who once looked away now record, speak, and act. The world didn't change overnight, but something had shifted. One evening, sitting by her daughter's bedside, Alyssa whispered, "You turned pain into power." The girls smiled sleepily, unaware of how deeply their story had touched millions. Sometimes, she still flew for work, always nervous at first. But now she was never alone. Every time she stepped onto a plane, someone recognized her, whispered words of support, or thanked her for speaking up. And in those moments, Alyssa knew this wasn't just her story. It was every story that had ever been silenced by prejudice, now taking flight toward justice. Because sometimes, change doesn't begin in courts or boardrooms. It starts in one mother's courage. And the tears of 3 innocent little girls who reminded the world what humanity should look like. What would you have done if you were in Alyssa's place? Tell us, which country and city are you watching from, belongers? Take care, Kara.